Rome celebrated Julius Caesar as a hero who brought civilization to the barbarian lands of Gaul. What the Senate did not celebrate were the methods he used to achieve that victory. Between 58 and 50 BCE, Caesar's campaigns in Gaul transformed him into one of Rome's most celebrated military commanders. But beneath the triumph and glory lay a campaign of systematic brutality that would be condemned as war crimes by any modern standard. The conquest that made Caesar's reputation was built on mass slaughter, deliberate starvation, widespread enslavement, and the ruthless execution of hostages. These were not the unavoidable consequences of war, but calculated tactics employed to terrorize entire populations into submission. While Rome celebrated with feasts and games, the lands of Gaul had been turned into a charnel house. The bloodshed was so vast that even Caesar's political enemies in the Senate attempted to hold him accountable, though power and ambition would ultimately prevail over justice. Mass killings during the Gallic campaigns. Caesar's Gallic Wars began in 58 BCE with the migration of the Helvetii, a Celtic tribe from what is now Switzerland. Some 368,000 people attempted to cross Roman territory seeking new lands. Caesar intercepted them at the Battle of Bibracte and slaughtered them without mercy. When the survivors returned home to conduct a census, only 110,000 remained. In a single campaign, Caesar had killed or displaced over 200,000 men, women and children, most of them civilians attempting a peaceful migration. The Germanic tribes who crossed the Rhine into Gaul faced even worse. When the Usipetes and Tencteri, driven from their own lands by larger tribes, sought refuge in Gaul, Caesar met them with annihilation. During negotiations for their surrender, Caesar ordered a surprise attack, while tribal envoys were still in his camp discussing terms. The assault was timed for maximum slaughter. Roman cavalry fell upon the Germanic encampments at dawn, killing warriors, elders, women and children alike. Ancient sources report that 430,000 people were massacred in this single operation. The killing was so thorough that the Rhine itself was filled with the dead. Caesar openly documented these massacres in his own war commentaries, presenting them as military necessity. Yet the scale of violence went far beyond what was required for victory. Entire tribes were exterminated not because they posed a threat to Rome, but because their destruction served as a warning to others. What Rome would later call pacification was, in practice, systematic ethnic cleansing carried out with industrial efficiency. The message to the tribes of Gaul was clear. Resistance meant extinction. According to the ancient historians Plutarch and Appian, the total death toll of Caesar's campaigns reached 1 million people. Modern scholars, while cautious about ancient numbers, agree that Caesar's campaigns resulted in catastrophic loss of life. The estimated population of Gaul before Caesar's arrival was between 3 and 6 million. By the time he finished, between 1/6 and 1/3 of that population had been killed. This was not conquest. This was annihilation. Deliberate starvation of besieged tribes. Caesar understood that hunger could be as effective a weapon as the sword. During the Great Gallic Revolt of 52 BCE, the rebel leader Vercingetorix employed a scorched earth strategy, burning towns and crops to deny the Romans supplies. Caesar responded by targeting the one fortified city Vercingetorix had agreed to defend. Avaricum, modern-day Bourges, known as one of the finest cities in all of Gaul. The siege that followed would demonstrate Caesar's willingness to weaponize starvation against civilian populations. Avaricum was naturally defended by rivers and marshlands with only one narrow entrance. Caesar's forces constructed massive siege works while Vercingetorix's army remained camped 15 miles away, harassing Roman supply lines. For 25 days, both armies endured hardship. The Romans ate only meat, a rarity for legionaries accustomed to grain. Yet Caesar refused to lift the siege, knowing that the 40,000 people trapped inside Avaricum would run out of food long before his disciplined troops broke. The situation inside the city became desperate. Refugees from surrounding areas had crowded into Avaricum seeking protection, straining already limited supplies. Women, children and the elderly slowly starved while the warriors watched helplessly from the walls. When Roman siege towers finally breached the defences during a rainstorm, the legionaries, frustrated by weeks of hunger and hardship, showed no mercy. Caesar's own account records that his troops killed all 40,000 inhabitants. Only 800 managed to escape. The city that had been praised as the jewel of the besieged tribe became a mass grave. The massacre at Avaricum was not an unfortunate consequence of siege warfare. Caesar had deliberately chosen to starve the population into weakness before launching his assault. The targeting of civilian food supplies, the refusal to accept surrender, and the wholesale slaughter that followed all demonstrated a calculated brutality designed to break the will of the Gallic resistance. It worked. The horror of Avaricum echoed throughout Gaul as a warning of what awaited any tribe that dared resist Rome. Enslavement of surrendered populations. The ancient sources are unanimous. 1 million Gauls were sold into slavery during Caesar's campaigns. This staggering figure represents not the casualties of battle, but the deliberate enslavement of defeated populations who had surrendered or been captured. Slavery was the fate awaiting those who survived Caesar's conquests, and it served both economic and strategic purposes. After the Veneti, a powerful maritime tribe, were defeated in a naval battle in 56 BCE, Caesar ordered the execution of their entire council of elders and sold the rest of the population into slavery. When the Tuci surrendered after a siege, Caesar accepted their capitulation and then promptly enslaved all 53,000 survivors, selling them in a single lot to slave traders who followed the Roman army. The conquered peoples of Gaul became commodities, distributed to Caesar's soldiers as rewards or auctioned off to enrich his war chest. The economic motivation behind this mass enslavement was significant. Roman generals were expected to share the proceeds from the sale of captives with the Senate, but Caesar's own commentaries conveniently omit any mention of these transactions. By recording in his reports that prisoners had been killed rather than enslaved, Caesar could keep the profits for himself and his troops. This deception allowed him to fund his campaigns while enriching his legionaries, ensuring their loyalty. The dispersal of enslaved Gauls throughout the Roman Empire served a strategic purpose beyond profit. By scattering defeated tribes across the Mediterranean world, Caesar ensured they could never reunite or return to their ancestral lands. Entire communities were torn apart, their language